We'll begin. So this roundtable has been set up in the frame of the work we are doing for the ADASH platform for visual arts. And the people I invited today are people who are partners and colleagues for a long time, for some of them. We will have the Maya Finders mentioned. I mean, this is in no way table which will be anti-museum, but we are just trying to face situations which might not fit with museum or which are beside or other context. The ADASH platform for visual art is part of the initiatives of ADASH, which were introduced very precisely before by Samuel Masri, with the director. And as you have heard, ADASH has many focuses, and one is visual arts, and specifically modern and visual arts. I think that part of the reasons for this discussion today is to see how we can operate in Abu Dhabi, in the region, and the region being the Emirates, being GCC, and over. As you know, we are very close for many reasons, geographical, but also traditional, historical, very close from Iran and India and Pakistan, and for reasons which have to do with history, which have to do with identification processes, very close to part of the Arab world. So I think that this notion of region is quite complex and open, and of course, nobody in Abu Dhabi would deny that we are in a globalized city, meaning addressing to the world. We will try also to discuss the way we are dealing with the modern heritage, and part of the discussion in ADASH has been from the beginning to see how we could focus on a certain number of issues which are quite difficult and not so many people are really either interested in or patient enough for dealing with. And of course, this has to do with research. This has to do with problematizing and promoting what we could call the modern heritage, and in between these various modern heritage, because as you know, nobody here, Marcel Duchamp doesn't need me, doesn't need Abu Dhabi for being promoted, and we are more focusing on modern heritages which have been more difficult to become visible and even more difficult to impose. And of course, part of our task would be to insist on corpuses and periods which have been neglected for one reason or another, and one of them being what we could call very, let's say, widely, and because of course it would take us much more than 1 hour for being more specific, the Arab modern, which we could say, for being again very fast and eventually even simplistic, is in a situation now which is between confiscated, at least has been confiscated for a certain number of people it was supposed to address. And if we don't react, if we don't move, if we don't work, we could pass from confiscation to it didn't happen. And there is one mission or one position I think ADASH would like to take, at least the platform for visual art, which is not to stick to this kind of a very low level, for not saying cheap attitude, the new beginnings. You know, there are not new beginnings. We are in specific situations, eventually with new tools, new possibilities, and we are trying to work out of it. This means that, of course, we are surrounded by museums. There is a very strong, very interesting museum actuality in the region and over. This is not a reason for not considering, for not paying attention to other initiatives which have been taken, and some of them very early in the region and Middle East and further, and which have to do with different cultural genealogies, which have to do with different cultural developments, and eventually with different audiences and different ways of addressing heterogeneous audiences. So these many ways of dealing with visual art and culture, these many ways of dealing with transmission will be addressed in this panel, sometimes from a retrospective way, sometimes, of course, with a very strong look at the future. One last point I would like to address is the fact that, again, and it's a paradox, it's not at all a condemnation or it's not at all childish or a genuine attitude. We are in the region and probably all over the world in a post-museum culture. And the big paradox of today is that this is precisely from one of the most extreme situations, which might be the situation, the cultural situation of the Emirates now, that we can probably address the more frontally, the more with more specificity, this situation, trying to find solutions. And I would call that, in a way, quoting Wim Koolhaas, learning from the AAU. Meaning that what we are dealing with here, what we're assisting to, has to do with the loop effect. When you are looking from very close and you see a certain number of things which are not necessarily pleasing you, but which are just reflecting, if not who you are, at least where you are. I would like now to really enter into the debate and introduce precisely the participants to the roundtable. So I will go from left to right with Christine Tomé. Christine Tomé is the founder and director of Ashkal Al-Wan in Beirut, and she's a curator and organizing homeworks for a certain number of years, which is a very important event for the art and cultural community, at least in Middle East, and going much further now because many people are going to homeworks. And Christine is busy at the moment with the organization of a Homeworks Academy, which will be an art education institution in Beirut. Next to me, Abdallah Lamri, who is an artist and who is also the director of the Department of Arts and Culture at Adash. Am I right? Adila Laidi Aniye, whom you might know because she was there previously. Adila was the director, and I think it's quite important for part of the discussion of today, was the director of the Zakakini Center, sorry, not our center, in Ramallah a few years ago, and she's now completing a PhD in the States. Last but not least, Nasrin Serhaji, who is an architect, with actually director of the École d'Architecture Paris-Malaquais, so architecture school in Paris, Paris-Malaquais, and also director of the Académie der Bildenden Kunst in Wien, which is an academy for art and architecture. We are missing one who couldn't attend for last moment problem and reasons, Omar Mrad, Lebanese artist based in Beirut. I think that we could begin maybe with Christine.